Hi, this is Ellen J. Mann, and you are watching the Honor Yourself First show, the place to be for information and inspiration on rediscovering the real you and creating the life that you desire and you deserve. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a condition that afflicts a lot of women in America. In fact, statistics show that 1 out of every 2,000, it used to be 2,500, but 2,000 women are afflicted with this condition. And I found it by just going to somewhere to a caregiver agency just to see if I could have them on my show. And I met an amazing woman called Emily, and she told me that about this syndrome. It's called TS, Turner syndrome. And so today I've got Emily Markowski with me, and also Debbie Browne, who's written a book about the whole thing, about your experience with your daughter.
Yes.
And our goal today is just to bring awareness to this community about Turner syndrome because of the medical condition that it has, and as far as being life-threatening. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking earlier on, and you were telling me how important it is for this to be diagnosed early on as a child, so that they can start treatment sooner. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to talk about a little bit about Turner syndrome, how you've been both influenced by it, not only as somebody who has it, Emily, but also as somebody who's been a caregiver too, Debbie.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes,
so welcome to my show.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you've got a book signing coming up this afternoon. So,
I do.
And I know we weren't going to talk about dates, but
right, yeah.
So what is Turner syndrome?
Basically, it's a genetic disorder that affects the chromosomes. Instead of an XX setup for a woman, it's an XO. You're either missing part of the second X chromosome or the whole X. And it just basically affects the way that we grow in utero and how we develop after we're born.
Wow, wow. So how did you know that you had this?
Well, my mother, from the beginning, I had a genetic heart defect that's brought on from having this disorder. My mom brought me to my cardiologist, and he realized some of the characteristics, and I had a karyotype test to let me know what was going on. I was 11 years old when I was diagnosed.
Wow, wow. Now you live here in Fort Wayne, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And we were doing the calculator a little bit earlier, and we figured out about almost 200 women here in the area have this syndrome. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I had never heard of it. And in fact, I had talked to some of my girlfriends about what we were going to do on this show, and they said, "What is that?" I went, "Well, that's why I'm doing this, so that people are aware of what's going on." Yeah. So that is awesome. So we had some questions that I wanted just to ask you guys about, just to bring more awareness to the community. So what are the symptoms or characteristics of Turner syndrome?
First of all, there's short stature. That's the most evident part of it. Then you go into the body aspects of it, and there is thyroid issues because it affects the endocrine system and the way that different hormones are produced. You have genetic heart defects that come out from lack of certain things during development, kidney issues. For, I guess, visual purposes, or when you get older, you may have hearing issues. You might have verbal learning disabilities. What else?
Well, the nonverbal also is something I didn't know about, that in education it makes all the difference in the world. Mathematics can be a real issue. And as a mom, I wanted my daughter to have the best educational experience, and it didn't show up really until she was in high school, when algebra became such a challenge. And not knowing exactly what I was facing, I didn't know that she needed extra time, tutoring, And I thought she was just being stubborn about the subject that she didn't like and wasn't doing her homework. But that was not the case at all.
So it's conceptualizing the numbers?
More abstract, kind of
Okay.
nonverbal. And then socially, to be able to read body language or expressions. And I mean, they really take the words that people say, you know, maybe literally or something. And anyways, it's a challenge, and it's something that needs to be addressed and understood.
And you were talking about depth perception when you were on your driving, trying to learn how to drive.
Yes.
Was a challenge. Yeah.
It took me about 3 tries, and my parents actually, they went to a driving school and got an instructor that taught immigrants when they first get here, because they teach in a different way, because there's a language barrier. That made all the difference in the world. When I went for the 4th time to go after I did training with this gentleman, it helped tremendously.
Yeah. I can see how we were talking about how people with Turner syndrome, with TS, get into professions like teaching and the medical industry or medical profession. And I can see how teaching, because when we're teaching kids, we have to know like lots of different ways to teach children, because each one learns a different way. So, wow, interesting. So we talked about some of the conditions that happen. How has it impacted you, Emily?
Well, I was born with a genetic heart defect. So I had open heart surgery when I was 2 weeks old, and then I was diagnosed with Turner's when I was 11. And I always had issues like with growth hormone therapy and going through that, dealing with the family aspects of we were talking about this last night with my sisters getting kind of jealous because my parents did have to take more time with me with medical appointments and different things like that. I had my second heart surgery about 3 years ago here in Fort Wayne, and it's been a roller coaster, but it's God brought me here for a purpose, and we work through it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did you know your daughter had TS?
Well, it's interesting. She, at 3 months old, she was way below the growth percentile. So that was a red flag that she was behind in her growth. So at 3 months, they also detected a heart murmur, is what they said. They sent us to Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas. By the time we had a bone age test, sweat gland test, blood work, they said at the end of the day, your daughter has a bicuspid valve. There's a lot of people born with bicuspid valves. Watch it as she grows. If she tires or gets wide around her mouth, you know, take her to a cardiologist if her blood pressure gets high, all these different things. But basically the other tests that we took, she's just going to be a small person. So we left the hospital thinking, we just spent a day to find out she's just going to be a small person. We have small people in our family, and we're like, she got the genes, you know. She'll have the pick of men all over the world because they're all looking for somebody cute and petite, you know. But it wasn't until she was 5 years old that I went to register her for kindergarten that the clerical person at the school said, okay, now you've got to take this, and you've got to get it filled out by your physician with a well-child checkup. She'll need her shots to start school. And it was just a random, at Kelsey-Seybold Clinic physician, a lady that walked in, and at the end of the exam, she says, has she ever had a karyotype test? And I said, oh, what? Never heard karyotype. And I said, well, I'm sure she did, because we went to one of the best hospitals in the world, and they did all this testing on her. She goes, well, if you don't mind, we'd like to draw a little blood. And that's all it is, just draw a little blood and see. Well, a week later, I got a phone call. The doctor wanted to see me as soon as possible. And I'm thinking, what could that be? You know, every mother's heart starts pounding, knowing that it was nothing, because we had already had that confirmation she's just going to be a small person, I went by myself and I sat in her office as she said, "Your daughter has Turner syndrome." Well, all I could hear was the word syndrome. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. She doesn't have syndrome. Well, now I know syndrome could be anything. It's a common group of symptoms, you know. So, and then she kept telling me, you know, all the things that Emily just said that could happen. But the thing that just hit me was infertility. And as a mother of a 5-year-old, I thought, you mean my daughter won't be able to have children? Wow. So I didn't quite know what to do. So we just kind of put it on the back burner, and then that same physician a few years later said, "Your daughter fits the protocol for a blind study for growth hormones, synthetic growth hormones." So she was on that study for 3 years. Wow. And she grew. I think the average height is what, 4'8"?
Yes.
And she grew to 4'11".
Wow.
So,
still small but huge.
Small. Yes.
Wow. And so diagnosing this syndrome early is very important?
Very, very important.
Okay.
And one reason why I know that is attending the conferences that Turner Syndrome Society has had, one in California last summer. The next one, this next summer in 2014, will be in Jacksonville, Florida, is to sit at my book signing table and to observe. And the younger girls with their parents there, they've had a real opportunity to use these hormones. And the older women, I mean, the height is very different. They didn't get that opportunity. So it's very, very important.
So this particular test, though, it's not normally given.
No.
But it's pretty easy to take.
Yes.
And so your advice to mothers is?
When in doubt, just
Take
do
the
it.
test.
You know, mothers have this intuition, this gut feeling, something's not right. I've met other Turner syndrome ladies whose mothers said, you know, something is not right. So if you have that question, just go get the blood test.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So you've written a book.
Yes.
And why did you write this book? And it's called
Loving a Leaping Butterfly.
Oh.
And it's a very interesting story how God has been in all of it, is all the way. And the reason why I say that is my daughter always loved butterflies, but I didn't realize until after she passed away that it's the national logo for Turner syndrome.
Is that right?
I wrote the book for the mother I was 30 years ago. I really did think of that one mom as I was writing this book that I wish had done something for me 30 years ago. So I wrote the story about my daughter from birth to death. She passed away at 28 with complications from heart surgery, post-op complications, actually a pulmonary embolism. But she had an aneurysm, 2 dissections, the bicuspid valve had to be replaced, all this at 28 years old at the prime of her life. And in ignorance, I wrote the story. I met with the Turner Syndrome director of the society in Houston, and Cindy sat down with me patiently and read my draft before it went to editing. And she said, "Do you realize you just wrote a book about a typical Turner Syndrome child and adult?" And I said, "No."
Wow.
So from there, the book stops, but I'm in the works for the second book to share everything I've learned.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. How important that is, though, to get that message out. And especially that we're not alone. I think that's the biggest challenge with any medical thing or any issues that we have.
Yes.
We're never alone. There's other people.
No.
Exactly. And so in Fort Wayne here, you've started a
Support group
through
through the Turner Syndrome Society.
Nice.
There's 4 of us in it right now, but there's room for a lot of growth. But we get together at least once a month, just either do lunches or go shopping. We love to shop.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? And just get together and talk about some issues. You know, right now, one of the primary issues, as Debbie said, was infertility. So we talk about how we feel right now with adoption and building a family through adoption or through the foster care system, and what that means to us.
Yeah, yeah, that can be very challenging. I can't imagine, because I've got a child, but I just can't imagine not being able to. But there are so many alternatives out there, but you do have to look and be careful. And it's so great that you guys can just sit down and talk about things, because you know, the unique challenges that you face are just amazing, especially from a medical condition. Yeah. Wow. So we talked about children and diagnosing them as soon as possible. Now, is there other things that you have to watch out for as a child is growing into puberty? And
well, the primary concern now is you have these children who have been watched from doctors, you know, from medical staff from the ages when they were diagnosed to through high school. And at a certain point, they kind of step away from the medical. And some things get untouched, unlooked at. And there are a lot of health issues that after, you know, teenage years into adulthood that do come up. One of my good friends passed away from the same type of situation, an aneurysm. And it was because, you know, at a certain point, you don't think it's important. Okay, we got the growth hormone, we got, you know, everything fine with what we expected, you know, out of it. So I'm done. And a lot of us girls are tired of being poked and prodded by that time, and we not refuse, but you
rebel.
Yes. Yes.
I get that.
And so it's very important to continue and be your own advocate. And what's scary is you can go into a lot of different medical areas and they say, what is Turner syndrome? Because they're still learning themselves, and they're still trying to get the whole picture of how to even treat women with Turner syndrome.
Exactly. Wow. So always be on target, always be mindful of your health, keep up with your doctor, don't rebel.
Yes.
I know that's a common thing. I have a friend whose daughter was diabetic when she was a child, and she got to that teenage age, and it was like, I'm not taking any more of this.
Right.
Well, you know, it has a major impact on her health long term if she doesn't.
Sure.
Plus, the fact that she could go into a coma at any time. So, take care of yourself, honor yourself.
Yes.
And do what's necessary. So, from just an everyday life, Emily, how has Turner syndrome been with you? I mean, what are the challenges you faced?
Basically, going into a store and having things out of reach, or going into certain situations where, again, the nonverbal, we may be taken advantage of because we're not confrontational at all. It was so funny kind of having a group of girls this weekend together just talking about, well, what are the issues? And one of them is we don't like confrontation at all. We'll avoid it at any cost. And so we might be abused, because people take advantage of someone who doesn't doesn't fight anything. Right. So very compliant. So that's part of it. Just again with the infertility dealing. I'm married. I have a wonderful husband, and just going through the process with him, he deals more of it in a very stoic way, and I'm, we can't have a kid, and he's just like, I just want to be with you anyway. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But it's coming to that point in building a relationship, knowing what direction you're going to need to build a family.
Right. You have to have a very strong relationship in order to get through that. A lot of praying together.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. It's amazing. So what can we do to help you?
Basically, be more aware of, Turner syndrome. Mm-hmm. I really want to reach out more to the medical staff and let them know, be more aware of the condition and what it brings and what issues come of it.
So you could do a whole session with them and sit down with them and just describe what's going on so they're more alert.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder if I'm sure there's professional physician groups around the area.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll have to look out for you too and see if we can find something that
I would love that.
Yeah. Parkview and Lutheran, I've got connections in both facilities, and maybe we could put something together.
That would be
awesome.
wonderful.
Yes.
That is so cool. So you've written this book, and you're on a book signing tour right now, and you've got another one coming up too, I heard.
I do. And the number one thing I think we can do for them is to learn about it and to understand it. Understanding builds compassion for people. If you don't understand something, you avoid it and run from it. But the number one thing is awareness. It really is. The society is really trying to build a medical symposium, bringing doctors, bringing parents, bringing women together. And so that's been a big step for them. Their goal will be research, and they've done a fabulous job. They really have. That would be my number one phone call if I were a mother who just got a new diagnosis. The third thing is support. In the book, my second book will be talking about how important it is to have groups, to have understanding, to have support. And I'm so excited to write it. I just need a place out in the middle of nowhere so I can think clearly.
Yeah.
But it's going to be glorious when it's done, because it's going to be sharing their hearts with the world.
Yeah.
They're just beautiful, beautiful women. So yes, I'm very excited about that opportunity too. But right now I'm very busy just trying to bring awareness, the books, right now they're in libraries in Houston. I'd like to have every library in the United States have one of the books.
Exactly.
I've had mothers that have miscarried daughters with Turner syndrome, and they buy my book to try to bring closure to what their daughter would have been like when the doctor says your little girl had Turner syndrome.
Wow.
It's pretty rare. What is the statistic for, it's amazing that they've been born.
It's estimated about 1% of fetuses actually survive to full term.
Wow.
10%, most of them are miscarried.
Yes.
So you are very special.
She is.
I love
They
that.
all are. They all are.
I love that. And you talked about the fact that you don't like confrontation.
Right.
And earlier we talked about the need for advocacy, and also for us to spend more monies looking at Turner syndrome, finding out what causes, what we can do to help.
Right.
Much more research needs to be done. And so mothers and the rest of us need to be advocating for you guys.
Correct.
And getting a hold of people to make that challenge happen.
And when we do get to, the age of having a spouse, having our husbands be advocates. One of the things that they have at the Turner Syndrome Society is men are the silent strength of TS. So just having your spouse be an advocate is huge as well.
Yeah. And they could have their own support group as well too.
Correct.
Just to talk about the issues that they face and what they can do together and combine. Because men tend to be silent sufferers as well too. So, getting them together and doing more support in that area.
There are so many opportunities that we can do. Sometimes it's overwhelming. But we decided yesterday, we've just got to start now with what, But the more people that know, the more people that will embrace this, the more we can do, the more powerful we can be.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about your ministry that you started?
Oh, yes, thank you. I wrote the book, and like I said, wondering, who's this going to touch? I assumed mothers of daughters with Turner syndrome. It has touched women with Turner syndrome, because they're like, yes, finally somebody's told our story and what we deal with, and a mother and a daughter who loved each other so much. So I asked the Lord, what do you want me to do with this? You know, where do you want to take me from here? And I realized that I didn't have to go out and create a ministry. The ministry had come to me. And the more I got to know the women, I thought they are the ones who have been overlooked all these years. The little girls are being taken care of by their parents, but it's the women. And there's so many long-term needs. As I was saying before, $65 will pay for a month's worth of estrogen therapy, and they desperately need that so that her organs stay nice and youthful.
The bones stay strong.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing, but I'd like to be able to raise enough funds to be able to help people with financial things.
And they can go to your website, which is?
Yes, leapingbutterfly.org.
Nice.
Nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they can learn more there. They can learn more at the turnersyndrome.org or ts.org site, just about Turner syndrome.
Yes.
And then your support group meets. They can just contact you, Emily.
Yes, they can directly. They can call me. They want the number 260-797-3063, or via email egmarkowski@gmail.com.
Nice. All right. And then you have another event coming up in the spring to bring more awareness. Tell us about that.
The Butterfly Walk. We have it situated at Shelf Park. It's going to start at 10 o'clock. We're still putting all the pieces together, but the plan is to have a walk and then have a little luncheon afterwards.
Nice.
So,
who are you looking for? Are you looking for supporters?
Supporters, families that deal with TS. We know they're out there in the community. Anyone who would be interested in learning more.
Okay. Sponsors?
Sponsors.
Okay.
Very interested in sponsors.
Everybody is. Exactly. Well, I'll have to get that Lutheran and Parkview connection for you. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Is there any other things that you would like to share with the audience before we close here?
Well, I would like to close with Turner syndrome does not go away. Ignoring it or not getting that karyotype test. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to this. Getting to know what's being done today has encouraged me that there is hope, there is support, there is research. You don't have to stay in the dark in this anymore.
That's awesome.
And for the women, you are unique and beautiful, and God has wonderfully made you. And even though you're different, that we should take the word different out and say unique.
Unique, exactly. Well, I want to thank you, unique ladies, for joining me today, and I look forward to getting this out and broadcasting it even more on YouTube after it's played, and it will play Monday and then Tuesday as well too.
Wonderful.
So I'll send you the link so you can tell your friends.
Oh, thank you.
So that's our show for today. Again, I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Access Fort Wayne for allowing me to have this opportunity to bring this information to you. And for my viewers, I want to remind you, you only have one life. So why not live it to its fullest and be the light that God intended you to be? Thank you.